Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Academy Rush. My name is Joshua Joshi Howard, and today we're going to be bringing you a matchup between Dignitas Academy and Team Liquid Academy. Now, we have to frame this a little bit. We have to remember that both these teams currently sitting in the bottom of the standings in Academy. Both of them sitting at 1 and 4. And after today's game, one of them is going to be able to move up and continue to press for that playoffs berth towards the end, but the other one, unfortunately, is going to end up in sole possession of last place. And interestingly enough, we see both teams moving as large groups of members into the other side of the jungle. Dignitas running down to the bottom lane, getting an early ward, trying to get a little bit of a meta read on their opponents, whereas Team Liquid not going to have a whole lot of fear, just going to be running right on in towards the opposing team's red buff, putting down a couple of wards, and as Dignitas come back, they have to be a little bit careful. Grig already going to be showing himself to his opponents, going to be spotted out on a ward, and at this point, both of them are going to be going for very different starts. You already see Dardoch moving up to the top half of the map, whereas Grig is going to be starting his red buff, and this is going to do a couple of interesting things, as we already see that Dardoch not going for his own blue buff, going to be going for the opposing red buff, and this is rather surprising to me. Now, we gotta pay attention to how these guys have been playing recently. We've already touched on the fact that both teams have been struggling throughout the summer split. Dignitas 1 and 4, Team Liquid 1 and 4, and so much of their success has been focused on their solo lanes recently. And FLICKR, after playing 4 games up in LCS, is now coming down to Academy once again, where he had a brutal game up against Huni and Enda, completely unable to deal with all of the pressure that these two fantastic players were bringing out. Now, a lot of us are going to be looking to see if he can turn things around going up against Team Liquid. But Team Liquid is another team that has a lot of their success tied to these solo laners. Jenkins and Yusui, when they do well, are generally going to be the ones who are going to take this team from struggling to having some dominant games. Jenkins and Viper, everybody's going to be having their eyes on these ones. Now, the big thing, with Grig starting on the bottom half of the map going for the red buff, Jenkins knows that Dardoch is going to be on the top half for a decent amount, and Grig going from his own red buff, from his opponent's red buff to his own blue buff, means that they're not going to have the same kind of pressure on the top side, and it's really going to hurt Jenkins' chances. As you see, he's been playing weak side of the map already down 10 CS at only 3 minutes. The other half of the map, though, things are going a little bit better for Team Liquid. Rikara and Yama on the Ezreal Karma can have a ton of early control over the wave. Karma, well known for basically single-handedly being able to choose where the lane is going to end up, and we see that right now is already building up a small lead for themselves, pushing Aphelios and Thresh underneath the turret. And then ultimately, this is going to be something fairly standard. It's very difficult for Aphelios to contest a lot of the early wave pushing, and as such, we see the traditional deficit that we are very used to. But still, with this vertical jungling going on, we have to pay a lot of attention to the top lane. Viper on the set, and Jenkins on the Volibear, traditionally pretty even lane for the most part. These two beefy boys just going to be hitting each other over and over, back and forth, but this is interesting. Finally, the two vertical junglers are going to potentially be meeting as Phoenix jumps in onto Yusui, forcing the flash right on out. Dardoch does show, but Grig not close enough to potentially get a counter gank in, and Dardoch now moving to the bottom side of the map, where he will expect that Grig will likely have taken a lot of his camps away, and Grig actually going to be sticking around in the mid lane, standing completely stock still so that Dardoch isn't actually going to be able to spot him. Well, while we let things lull a little bit, hold on, hold that thought. Grig and Dardoch going to be potentially meeting, as Dardoch going to the bottom half hasn't quite spotted out this Lee Sin quite yet. Oh, there's so much tension already coming in. Dardoch, they know almost precisely where he is. JJ is coming up to support him. Aphelios was able to get the wave to crash back in the other direction. But it looks like everybody is going to be backing away. Grig has already returned to base, and both junglers devoting a lot of time around this mid lane. But while we take a little bit of a pause while both the junglers return to the base, I want to talk a little bit about these compositions and simply where we can expect a lot of action to be happening. Obviously, we look at the top lane. We were expecting a potential haymaker fight between Viper and Jenkins. But naturally, the vertical jungling, Jenkins coming out behind simply because he's been playing weak side, and putting the Volibear behind is very good for Dignitas. But the rest of the map, Yusui and Rikara are playing these traditional Trinity Force plus tier marksmen, and both of them have these monstrous wake-ups in the mid-game. So we're going to be starting to look around Dragons 2 and Dragons 3, where it's going to be very difficult for Dignitas to contest the power that Rikara and Yusui on the Corki and Ezreal will have at that point in the game, and that's where Team Liquid can really look to make a lot of their big plays. A lot of their members are going to be sitting on 2 items. They have massive wake-ups, whereas on the other hand, Dignitas, while their wake-ups on these items, about 2.5 items, no slouches themselves, aren't going to have the same kind of just raw power. LeBlanc and Aphelios are definitely champions that are looking to get stronger and stronger throughout the course of the game. Asta going to be using that Conqueror to be doing a lot of damage. So as this game gets towards the mid game, we're going to be expecting to see big moves coming out of Team Liquid, whereas Dignitas, if this game goes really late, should be pretty happy with their position overall, at least coming out in the damage from their carries. The one big difference, though, that does give Team Liquid a little bit more hope as the game goes later is that they have a little bit more easy backline access. LeBlanc can oftentimes kill one of these marksmen, but will often struggle to kill the other one. Simply because both Corki and Ezreal are so mobile, they will be building a couple of defensive items. Whereas Aphelios, he's only got his flash to play with, and Greg and Jenkins should be able to stand up and be able to deal enough damage as they go through. But right now, Hook going to be landing down in the bottom lane, JJ getting a little bit of damage onto Yama, all the while Greg is going to be doing the first dragon of the game, picking up the Cloud for himself, as the game's starting to sit in a fairly even state for the most part. Only 300 gold separates these two teams, and if we were to look at the gold, I would have to expect almost all of that comes from the difference in the top lane. But now, as things are starting to bounce around a little bit more, as we're starting to get a little bit more chaotic, Dardoch, knowing that Yusui doesn't have his flash, is going to be moving over towards the mid lane, and we all know how much damage LeBlanc is able to do at most parts of the game, and Dardoch, level 6, does have an opportunity, but Yusui seems to be smelling things out. He knows that he needs to play pretty far back, but here we go, Dardoch going in for the potential dive, goes in, gets the knockup briefly, is going to be forced to use the ultimate. Phoenix already so low, but Dardoch is going to be able to pick up first blood and walk on out. Clean dive coming out from the side of Dignitas, and this is already a much better showing. At this point in the game yesterday up against Evil Geniuses, they had already lost so much pressure up in the top lane, as Viper making a couple decisions not going his way, already sitting up 20 CS in the mid lane. Phoenix, this storied mid laner AD carry, is going to be absolutely okay, and Yama going to be the next one to fall, as a couple of quick spells are going to be coming out from JJ, locking him up and blowing both the flash and the exhaust. And this game starting to get out of Team Liquid's control very, very quickly already. Greg gonna have to try and do something, knowing that Phoenix is a little bit low, and spotting out Dardoch with the Scryer's Bloom might have an opportunity to look at this Rift Herald. But right now, the rest of his lanes aren't particularly strong. Jenkins does have a bit of a push, but Viper with the teleport available can come very quickly. The big thing that might help them a lot is Yama. First to the punch here is going to be helping out his team, but the duo of Asta and JJ already moving up towards this Rift Herald. Rig not going to be one to give it up just so easily, going to be trying to stick around a little bit longer, and Dardoch finally showing his face. JJ and Asta are there, and that's going to be dissuading Team Liquid from going in to start it up on their own. But the fight, the tension hasn't quite dissipated yet. Herald's going to be giving JJ a pat on the back as he makes his way out of the river. And Jenkins now caught up in a 1v2. Ezreal and Karma are going to be moving up, and Jenkins again a little bit slower to the punch. Finally, actually, with all 5 members up here, Team Liquid going to be starting up the Rift Herald. Viper still having the teleport available, but Dignitas seems to be happy to give this over. And ultimately, it does strike me as a little bit worried that they're willing to give some of these objectives over so early on in the game. We're already looking at Team Liquid as having this big wake up a little bit later. They pick up their first Cloud Dragon, they pick up their Rift Herald, but their wake up is coming in at the 2 items when both of the Sheen items for Ezreal and Corki are complete. It's going to get harder to fight this Team Liquid team, not easier over the next 10 to 15 minutes, and Jenkins, knowing that Yusui with the package is nearby, looking to potentially be a little bit more aggressive, but ultimately is going to be just settling out once again. 400 gold, 300 gold separating the two top laners at this point. But all the rest of the map looking potentially pretty even. Dardoch getting that first blood is going to be having a small advantage as well, and now more people are going to be coming up towards the top lane, but both junglers are here. Dardoch will be spotting out Greg here in just a moment as they start the dive. Are they going to commit to this? The flash coming through from JJ, not going to be landing the flay. Is he going to land the death sentence? No, he's not, and now they're caught behind the turret. They are going to be able to pick themselves up a little bit more. They will get a second play off of this top lane turret, which is going to give them a little bit longer. Greg potentially looking for an opportunity. Lands the resonating strike. Sonic. Sonic something. I don't remember at this point, but it's okay. We all know what's going on. The first part of the queue, Dardoch coming around once again, trying to stop the backs coming out from Greg. Yusui has a teleport available. There's a teleport for Viper, but here we go. A huge potential fight breaking out. All 5 members of Dignitas looking to dive these 3 members of Team Liquid. Are they going to be able to do it? They are going to be able to clear the wave behind before things start off. A teleport is being committed from Yusui. The ultimate comes out from Asta. That's a lot of damage. Viper going through, doing some damage to 2 people, and a double kill already coming out for Phoenix. Dardoch going to be running back to the backside at Ricard, going to be going down as well. Yusui has nowhere left to go as a triple kill is going to be picked up for Dignitas Phoenix here. And another beautifully clean dive, and this all comes down to the play around the Rift Herald previously. Jenkins sticking around in order to pick up that objective for his team, commits the teleport to come down to the bottom side of the map, and he's unable to join Dignitas, preying on this tendency, and Viper already looking so much better than he did in the previous game yesterday. And now Phoenix, one of these players who has been around the scene for so long, who's had so much success on and off the Rift, now with 3 kills underneath his belt, and Team Liquid with these 2 Sheen items that they're potentially looking at picking up, getting pushed back. It might not be enough when you're going up against the one member you really needed to not find success. But now, Team Liquid trying to start up the Earth Dragon is going to be pushed off once again. I do like the idea they were going to be first on the map after the dive comes through, because all of Dignitas are forced to back away, spend their goal. But now Phoenix, looking to go in, is going to get the blue buff smited away by Greg. But we're just seeing the power that is already coming out from this Dignitas lineup. 3,500 gold up on their opponents in the lanes that we were hoping to do rather well for Team Liquid. Namely, the bottom lane is now 10 CS, a kill, and 4 assists behind. You look at Rikara's CS, we were already praising this lane for having so much power, and Asta in the 1v1 against Rikara has 2 levels above him and just was able to finish off an entire top lane turret. 3 extra plates of solo gold. A kill and a half extra gold just being funneled into this Aphelios and Asta and LeBlanc. And honestly, every single member of Dignitas is going to be so far ahead of their opponents at this point that you really have to wonder where it is that Team Liquid can look to build up some advantages for themselves. At the beginning of the game, we touched on Jenkins as one of these members that has a lot of say in whether or not Team Liquid finds success. But Viper and Greg, they're getting caught out. JJ is going to show up, but the turret is going to go down to the charge of the Rift Herald, getting them a little bit of gold back in their pockets. But Jenkins and Greg, knowing that JJ is already here and not having vision on most of the members of Dignitas, are going to have to leave it at that. They aren't confident in their ability to dive into a team when they don't know how many members are there. But there's a big conversation to be had here around risk tolerance for teams. As you start to fall behind, you have to ask yourself, what are my odds of winning this game? 50%? 80%? 20%? And it changes what decisions you should be looking to make. If you only have a 20% chance of winning those games, the 50-50 smites start looking pretty good. Whereas on the other hand, if you have an 80% chance of winning the game from the current position, those 50-50 smites not looking so good. And Team Liquid starting to fall pretty heavily behind. You have to start asking, when do they start making these riskier plays, these plays that require individual outplays? And again, anonymous Twitch chat viewer, I say to you, it's going to be on these Sheen power spikes when they finally start to come out. Rikara still stacking up his tier, not going to be building towards the full Trinity Force just quite yet. Yusui got the components for the Mana Mune, but not going to be finishing up the Muramana for quite a while yet, and already has the Phage. Doesn't really have an option of building an Iceborne Gauntlet like the Ezreal does, but still, his items are a ways away at this point. Team Liquid gotta be waiting for these item wake-ups before they're able to make these big plays. And you see, even Jenkins on the other side of the map going to be building himself a Trinity Force as well. So across the map, Team Liquid, they have a power spike coming through that they can play with, but after that, it's going to be looking all Dignitas. And if they start giving over a couple more kills in the near future before they have the opportunity to finish these items, it might be all she wrote. Phoenix, well, he's just starting to stand in random bushes where Team Liquid might not expect a 3-0-1 LeBlanc with a Magi's Soul Stealer to be sitting around, and they are going to spawn him out on this warp. He's got 3 levels on Greg. You got to be careful, Lisa. That's not a LeBlanc that you can take, that you can really tussle with, and wisely going to be backing away, and that's going to be giving over a Rift Herald to Dignitas. And one of the interesting things between these two teams, naturally, being at the bottom of the standings, neither of them have been particularly good at picking up neutral objectives, so we'll get back to that in just a moment. As Greg is going to be losing this Krug and his life instead. Oh, Phoenix is going to be going forward. Yusui going to be using the Valkyrie to get into range, and he's going to be picking up a couple of these rocks for himself. But Greg is going to be able to keep himself alive. We were touching on the neutral objectives for these two teams. Now, Team Liquid, unfortunately, has had a terrible time this split picking up dragons. They've been able to get 1.3 average dragons a game for a total of 28.8% of total dragons available. Dignitas, looking at the same game score, has been able to secure 2.5 dragons, or 60.4% of dragons in their games, which is a pretty stark difference. Now, Team Liquid, with this Infernal Dragon coming up, is going to be very focused on trying to pick up this Infernal Soul, simply because they have such fantastic poke. The Infernal Soul takes a number of abilities like the Mystic Shot, like Corki's Missile Barrage, and turning them from, you know, medium to light poke into heavy-duty warheads every single time you throw one out. Now, Rikara is going to be poking Viper around a little bit, but he's already got a Bramble Vest completed, not going to be having a whole lot of issues with that. And as we see Dragon 3 coming up, this is about the time that I was looking for Team Liquid to start doing a lot of damage. This is about the time that we were looking for these Trinity Forces to start coming out, but they're just not there yet. If you look at Team Liquid's inventory, you got Jenkins with 2 components, you got Yusui with 1 component, you got Yukara with only 1 component, and giving over Dragon 3 at this point, the first of the Infernal Dragons, just means that Team Liquid's going to fall a little bit farther behind in their ability to scale into this game. They're starting to look at power around Dragon 4, but by the time you're 2-2 on Dragons, it's oftentimes too late to expect a full soul to come out in the game. And now Jenkins, hounded by multiple members of Dignitas. We've seen some successful dives so far today. Yusui getting dove twice, and everybody but Jenkins just getting dove the one time in the top lane. Jenkins, he's a tanky bear. He's got the ability to press R and give himself a bunch more extra HP, and almost a feint coming through from Dignitas. They send a bunch of members to the bottom side, draw a couple people to try and protect this volley bear in Jenkins, and instead they're going to be feinting. They're going to be sending Asta to the mid lane to pick up that mid lane turn and give them even more control over the state of the game. Now, I'm kind of curious to see what Greg is really looking to do. He did used to play against Dignitas. He's played with a lot of these members before, and now they're going to be finding Viper out. He's completely isolated. He's just going to be flashing the wall. Greg going to be landing the Q and kicking him right on back. Yama got to be a little bit careful. The True Shot Barrage going to come through. Not going to be landing onto an important target. The ultimate coming out of Viper, but ultimately it's not going to do him a whole lot of good. In a 3v1, completely isolated from the rest of his team, most of the members of Dignitas had backed away to base, and Viper, that's a strong champion. He's not strong enough to 3v1 at this point in the game. And honestly, I just gotta praise Greg for some heads-up thinking, saving the Q for the flash from Viper, saving the ult to kick him back over the wall, and then using the blast cone to get back. Like, that's the kind of play that you really need to look at as these incredible presence of mind from your team. Just having the wherewithal to go for these kind of things and have all of these little bits and pieces lined up, ready to go, is really what separates so many of these players from moving on to chasing the really big leagues, potentially going to Worlds. But Greg still got to win this game first. Looking at the rest of Team Liquid, we're starting to see machine items coming through. 3 components sitting on Jenkins. He's probably going to be finishing his Trinity Force here momentarily. Corki got 2 components, and going to be continuing to stack up this Manamune towards the Muramana, and of course Rikara already picking up the Iceborne Gauntlets. They do what they can to mitigate the damage coming out of this Rift Herald. It is going to get a charge into the mid lane, which will make it easier later on for Asta to knock that one down. But up in the top lane, we're continuing to see Yusui and Phoenix in an extended laning phase, and it becomes much more dangerous for this Corki. Even picking up the kill doesn't put him anywhere close to the damage that Phoenix can put out. And look at that, even missing the first ethereal chain, going to be doing more than half of Yusui's HP. Not going to be able to trade a whole lot of damage back in Phoenix. The only thing is preventing him from really continuing to push Yusui in the fact that he's almost out of mana, whereas Yusui, with the fleet footwork and plenty of mana still in his pocket, going to be able to push this out, make sure that he stays at least abreast of his opponents in terms of the actual CS that they have coming in. But again, we're starting to see some of these big power spikes coming out from Team Liquid. This is when they're starting to look at big opportunities to make plays. Ricard's got his Iceborne Gauntlet completed. The Cole has already been finished. Yusui going to be backing away for the Trinity Force fairly soon. He has to be very close to the amount of gold needed. Jenkins already has his Trinity Force, whereas when you look at the items across the aisle at what Dignitas have been able to pick up, I mean, naturally, we're going to be looking at a couple of big Phoenix. Still only sitting on the Lude's Echo. He's going to be sitting on a lot of gold and should have an opportunity to back away for potentially Morello Namicon or pieces of a Zhonya's Hourglass, but he's also got a 7-stack Magi Soul Stealer. Up in the top lane, Viper with the Blade of the Rune King, while a very powerful item on this champion, just the quality of the damage that comes out, nowhere close to what the Trinity Force is able to bring. However, you look at Asta's inventory, and we talked a little bit about how accelerated this guy already was previously, getting a ton of solo plates for himself, having a ton of extra gold, those kills, those assists coming in, and now with the mid lane turret falling, just a little bit more money pouring into his coffers. But 30 seconds left. Team Liquid going to be having to play for this dragon, but they're not in a position where they can actually contest for it. Yusui does have his teleport, wants to make sure he can finish his item before things start up, and Phoenix still hanging out in the top side of the map. 3 teleports available for Team Liquid. 15 seconds on the Infernal Dragon, but no easy teleport wards available for them. And ultimately, I feel like this is a bit of a mistake for Team Liquid. They're starting to fall behind across the map, and they need to start picking up some of these objectives in order to make sure they can maintain some parity later on into the game. The extra AP and AD being given over to all the members of Dignitas is very scary for them, and they're not even going to be contesting for it. As we see a 3rd dragon going in favor of Dignitas, the dragon differential between these two teams continuing to hurt them, and now with the Baron on the table, another dragon not spawning for nearly 5 minutes. Team Liquid's opportunities to look for these team fights on their power spikes is rapidly disappearing. Set continuing to push in against the Volibear. Grig going to be clearing out a couple of wards away from Dignitas around the Baron, and Yama doing a little clever thing, you know, just a little tip and trick for anybody who is watching. If you do put the wards behind the Baron, it's a little bit more difficult to actually clear them. You gotta move your screen in such a way so that the 3D perspective, the isometric way that League of Legends is played works in your favor. You can see around the Baron, which makes it a little bit slower to clear, and I'm sure we all have been there where we try and hit it and we end up auto-attacking the Baron, and it's like, sorry support, you ended up taking a 1/3 of your HP simply because I made a small mechanical mistake. But JJ going to potentially find Grig here, is going to get spotted out with the Q and going to be walking right on out. But let's take a look at some items coming through once again. We touched on Phoenix looking to be building up that Muron. Oh my god. Almost has that completed. Grig is finding JJ. He goes in, is going to be kicking it back towards Ricard. This is a lot of damage. JJ has his flash available. It's not going to be enough as he walks into the waiting open arm of Jenkins Volibear. And Asta, I don't know if this is a place where he can be. Jenkins has the ultimate. This is going to cancel the turret. The flash is already used. But Jenkins is going to be just wandering on out. Knows that Phoenix and Dardoch are coming in, and just going to be trading the ultimate from Volibear for the flash from Asta. Actually going to be quite good for them later on. We talked about the lack of mobility available to Aphelios, and taking away his one spell. Oh no, Yama getting jumped on by Phoenix and blown up completely. Dardoch now in a potential 1v3, and he still seems pretty comfortable in the situation. He's here with the pack. There's potentially a big fight. They go through. Rek'Sai is instantly shut down. Asta and Phoenix going to be walking away, and I think that's all she wrote. Team Liquid, not a whole lot of tools to necessarily continue this fight, and looking at the damage that's already coming through for Asta on this Aphelios with 2 completed items. A little bit too much for them to deal with, but that's a big shutdown for them to pick up for themselves. Once again, going into Jenkins' hands. He finds himself 2 kills, one onto JJ, one onto Dardoch in the last 4 minutes. Now Yusui potentially fancying an opportunity to fight with Phoenix now that they do have a little bit more tools in their pocket. Again, the 2 major items for Corki coming through. Instead, Phoenix not going to handshake on that, going to be walking on out. I think it's important, once again, to take stock of where these 2 teams are going to be ending up as this game goes later and later. And LeBlanc is one of these interesting characters that you do have a ton of damage throughout the game. Naturally, you're looking at finishing these item or 2, and we see that only about 200 gold up on their opponents. But the big place where we're going to be seeing a lot of difference in the damage coming through is actually going to be Asta. We're looking at Viper to be potentially pretty consistent up in the top lane and just not lose his mind as he goes and gives potential kills away. But now, Asta with 2 items completed, 2,000 gold up on Ezreal, is going to be doing a ton of damage. And we talked about the lack of mobility. Doesn't have his flash available. Doesn't have any other mobility tools really available to him. So if Jenkins and Grig are able to get on top of the Aphelios, they can blow him up very, very quickly. However, it's important to remember that this champion does have Severum. This champion does have Graviton. When these are available, he does a ton of damage and has a ton of self-healing tools for himself. And with JJ available, if he's on top of it, making sure to use the play, the death sentence, the dark passage to keep this Aphelios alive, Asta is in a position where he can completely shred Team Liquid apart across the entire map. But here, as we get to this lull state, we're kind of looking at one of the last opportunities for Team Liquid to really bring themselves into a spot where they can proactively look to win the game, rather than trying to count on mistakes Dignitas. And it's coming up. 40 seconds, teleport coming through. This is Ricard. This is a little bit dangerous. Not going to get caught. Forced to Arctic Shift immediately. But 30 seconds left on Infernal Dragon, and this is Infernal Soul Point for the side of Dignitas. As Phoenix gets a little bit of poke down onto Jenkins, but I do like this. Team Liquid know they can't afford to give this objective up. They don't have a whole lot of control over the mid lane. They have lost 2 turrets, and the minions are slowly going to be pushing against them. A wave crashed by Viper up in the bottom lane. Now Rikara, Yama, and Yusui all got to be so careful around Phoenix's LeBlanc. Getting a little bit of poke back and forth. The dragon is spawning, but they already caught Grig. He's instantly blown up. No smite available for Team Liquid. Let's see if Jenkins can turn things around. Is going to get jumped on immediately by Viper and this bear. He's big, but he's not that scary. Another kill getting picked up. A double kill for Asta. Now, Rikara and Yusui, they have these Sheen items, but is it going to be enough? No, it's not. They're going to go down. Yusui, the last man standing for Team Liquid, and he has to run away, and that's going to be an easy secure of whatever objective Dignitas wants to pick up. They're going to be valuing this Infernal Dragon. They're going to be having Set started up on his own, but Yusui, if he sniffs this out, if he gets the idea that the Infernal Dragon is isolated, if he gets the idea that Baron is getting started by the members of Dignitas, he can potentially choose to stop one of them. He doesn't go over towards the dragon, but I think he's got a little bit of an idea that this Baron is getting started up by the members of Dignitas. He's got a lot of poke, and you got to remember, Baron will have an aura. Every time it does a little bit of damage, it is going to reduce your magic resistance. There's no smite available here. He goes for the ultimate, and it's just not quite enough. He's just like, oh yeah, they're hitting the Baron. Great, come smite it. And it's too late. There's nothing left for Team Liquid to do. They lose the Baron. They lose Infernal Dragon with 3 Infernal Drakes under it, and that's just going to make Phoenix and Asta that much scarier. The Death Stance coming through for Asta, and I don't know about you guys, I just call this the good item. You have so much extra resistance to burst. You have so much extra healing that comes out, and it makes it makes a gun like Severum that much crazier, because it's so difficult to kill through all the sustain that this champion is going to be able to bring. And 5,000 gold lead, I mean, potentially the least relevant of the leads that Dignitas has built up for themselves. And now, Team Liquid firmly in a spot where Dignitas has all of the cards on the table. They're the ones with all the power. They're the ones with all the agency. And now we have to pay attention and see, are they going to have the tools necessary to close out this game cleanly? So far, it looks like they're doing a pretty good job. The 1-3-1 is coming out. Viper does have the teleport available, and we have to imagine that Team Liquid going to be losing all structures outside of their base with little to no contest. As Dignitas continues to walk things forward, 17 stacks on Phoenix's Soul Stealer. Going to be moving through Asta, at risk of getting jumped on by Jenkins, but you have to look at the level differences. Look at how much resources have been funneled into this man. He is level 16 on Aphelios, while Jenkins on this Volley Bear is only level 15. And look at the damage coming through. Rig forced to walk away from just the auto attacks of Asta. Phoenix continuing to hold pressure in the mid lane. Viper continuing to hold pressure up in the top lane. There's not a whole lot of places for Team Liquid to go. They're looking to start a fight. They are looking for it. The death sentence kicked away. They're not going to have an opportunity. But Asta, look at this. Severum's going to keep him so healthy. He doesn't even go down. Dardoch's going to be the one who ends up paying the price for the sins, and it's not even going to matter. Phoenix jumping forward, finding a kill, finding another root, and Viper just going to be jumping on top of all these members. There's nobody left on Team Liquid. They're going to be having an opportunity to clean up the base. They're going to be the ones who are going to be moving towards the playoff berth, and that's just going to be leaving Team Liquid alone and sad, all in the last place here in Academy Summers. Team Dignitas picks up their win.